Well, well, well. Hello, everyone. I want you to help me with something. So, first of all, can you hear me? And second question, can you hear some beeps from a PC? Let's see if we get some answers there. If you can hear me, please post in the comment section. Let me put my face up here. Good. I have a Mac. I have quite a few of them, but unfortunately, I have to use a PC to put everything together. Give me a second. Yeah, uh, you can hear the beats. The beep beep beep. Is that what we're talking about? The beep beep beep. Good. So I'm coming through okay. I just want to make sure that that beep 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 thing is not coming through, and I don't know where that's coming from. I need me just turn off the internal speakers and see if it's um, okay. Within the next 10 seconds, let me know if you can still hear the beep beep beep, the typical PC thing. Again? Oh no. Again? Tell me if you hear it again. Oh, okay. No beep beep beep. Good, good. Okay, well, let's officially start this. Good. You can hear the Knowsman. Fantastic. There's something about my botched together connection, NDIs, and all that beautiful stuff. And there's something about this particular laptop PC that, for some reason, it did it last time, but then I restarted a few times and it fixed itself. It fixed itself. We are in a lot of trouble. So today we're going to have not only my beautiful face and my beautiful background and my beautiful screens. Let's do a test. So we should be able to see the Mac screen with something over here. We should be able to see the PC screen with nothing in here. And we should be able to see my face. And I have one more, which is not assigned to a button. It's assigned to a click. And let's see if this is to my camera. And excellent. So let's assume that the stream begins right now. A couple of questions that may come up. Why didn't I have beats? For anyone that doesn't know, I posted it in my previous one. Some I use GarageBand, and I used a main loop from the free loops that the program provides, and I added a few more things. I made my own composition, and I used it as my intro. Now, someone a few years ago, they took the same loop from GarageBand, they play that continuously, and on top of that, they sing, I feel good, and something like that. I've linked that song to on my Twitter channel. Now, the company that handles that person, I think he's got one follower, that music, actually had a copyright claim on 2 hours of content on 3D because my intro had that loop, which we're both using, which is a free open source loop. So now I'm waiting for YouTube's artificial idiocy to sort things out. I don't know how this is going to happen. I decided because my other video became monetized for that, and the money's going into an escrow account. We're talking about a lot of money here, maybe 30 cents or a dollar, something like that. And yet it annoys my viewers to see the ads, but nonetheless, that is the case. So I decided not to put any music here because there's a lot of bottom feeding companies on this planet. And apparently someone went to GarageBand, made one song with each and every one of the loops, sort of registered them with a music company, bottom feeding, the ones that, like catfish, they suck the bottom of the bog, and they just go and do claims, and they pick a few cents here and a few cents there. Anyhow, so no sound on table camera. That's a very good point. Thank you very much for that. So if you give me 30 seconds, I will add it because I will need to do some talking with that. So 30 seconds and I'm adding it. Enjoy the camera. I'm going to do things with my fingers. 1, 2. So you should be able to see me now. Okay. So can you hear me now? Nope. Yes. Good. Just tuned in. Okay. Fantastic. So if anyone has a question, what you need to do is type question, capital letters, and ask something. Try and be as specific as possible, but wait until I show you the introduction, because we are going to start with the fun stuff. All right. We are going to start with props. Right. I bought balloons to show you what stretching is of UVs and what, the cuts and all that. So let's begin about what UVs are, why, what problems do they have, and what problems do they solve. So the main concept is that usually when we want to confine or put a texture on an object, and don't forget, when we talk about 3D objects, we're talking about surfaces, all right? It's just very thin pieces, thin polygons that create a surface of sorts. And applying a texture means that we need to take a flat image, literally a two-dimensional image, a rectangular image, and find a way to put it on that surface. Now, on the face of it, it sounds quite a simple task, but actually, it's not. And the reason why it's not is that surfaces, 3D objects and surfaces, they can have all sorts of topologies. So here are some examples. So I'm going to switch to my beautiful little webcam here. And watch this. So this is a balloon, so it's latex. This is a flat surface here. Okay. Now, if we take this flat surface and bend it across one axis, like that, then you see that there's no real deformation, right? If we bend it on one axis, there's not a real problem. A simple fold. So you just take this and you fold it. But what if we have something which is a bit more complex, where it can't be folded in one axis? So I've got my finger in here and I want to cover it with this thing. If I want to cover it without any creases, I need to stretch it. And you get distortion. Now, another thing. Take this cone, for example. Let's assume that I want to apply a texture on a cone that is seamless all the way around. Seamless, seamless, seamless. All right? The question that begs an answer is, how do you take a cone and you make it flat? In the good old days, they will take sheep and they would eat them, and then we'll take the skin and make a carpet out of them. And they would do that by stretching the skin of the object. But that introduces distortion. Or another thing you can do is cut it. So a cone is an object that if we take a pair of scissors and we cut one straight line, we can then take the result and make it into one flat surface. What I just did here is I added a seam and I unfolded the UVs on a flat surface. So this is the number one concept of being able to take a surface that has a complex, let's say, deformation, a surface that has a complex surface, sorry for that, and find a way with the minimum amount of cuts to make it flat. And any object that has a deformation, a bend, imagine a bend deformation, only in one direction, that is a very easy thing to do. You just cut it once and unfold it. Now, if a surface is open to begin with, like a flat plane, like a mouse pad, then you don't need to do any cuts because it's the nature of that surface to be open up. So the best way you can think about UVs is if you take a projector, a little image projector, like a little TV projector, and that will create a straight projection. Take any object. I made this out of paper. If you want to go about opening this up, and making a flat surface out of it, and I used tape to do that, we're going to see what this looks like when we start cutting the seams. And hopefully I'm looking at the camera to make sure that I'm in. So I'm cutting seams now. We're going to see all this in the 3D world very, very soon. And I'm going to show you all the tools and everything you need to do. I'm just cutting these to see. You can see I'm adding quite a few cuts. This is not something, I used glue, I used tape, I used a number of things here. So this may take 3 seconds or so forth. There we go. There we go. A few more to cut. There we go. I should have marked it with a different color, but I think I've done it, and I think we've got one more cut to do. If I find it, I think it's this one here. There we go. So I've taken that icosahedron and I've managed to unfold it on a flat surface. This is one of the things we are going to do using Cinema 4D. And I'm going to explain as best as possible what we need to take into account to do this. Now, cutting is one of the solutions, but it introduces one of the problems. The problem that it introduces is lack of continuity, which means that if I put this on a flat surface and project, let's say, a noise or something like that, anything outside these polygons, which now coincidentally are the UV polygons, the texture that exists here won't be visible. And when I connect this little edge to this one here, they have a visible seam. So when we are unwrapping objects using cutting, we lose continuity. So one of the two parameters we need to take into account when we are creating, let's say seamless, we want to create seamless texturing, is to make sure that we have the minimum amount of cutting if we want the texture to wrap around. And that's not always possible. Let's go to the other problem. The other problem is stretching, because I could have taken this and stretched it out in some sort of way. But if I want to wrap, as I told you before, something on a complex surface nicely around hand, you will start getting all sorts of distortions. You can see now how these distort. So between the two extremes of lack of continuity, which is the cutting introduces that, and lack of consistency in terms of having stretched textures at some point, doing good UV and wrap has to work with whatever bias of the two. If you want it to have fewer cuts, it's going to have more stretching. If you want it to have less stretching, it's going to have more cuts. But that is dependent on the object. So let's take, for example, this surface. So this is a corner of a cube. I know it doesn't look like it. That's why I put those markers. So it's a bit floppy. This is a corner of a cube. So if I want to take these three sides of a cube and create a seamless UV and wrap, because I don't want to cut anyway, because if I make one cut, then it's very simple. It just unfolds in 3 pieces, right? But if I don't want to make cuts, I need to take this and stretch it to the point that it's flat. I need a third hand here, but anyhow. And this is going to create the stretching. So this is something that it's not a technology limitation of Cinema 4D or any program in particular. The UVs have some intrinsic parameters, and the concept of applying, of projecting, as we say, a material onto a UV, a specific UV layout, has to be confined within the boundaries of the limitations of the technology. There have been many different methods. They've tried to mitigate that, and PTEX is one of them, where it saves an image per polygon or something like that. But still, UVs seem to be the reason, the easiest way to deal with this problem. And as far as I'm concerned, if you combine a decent UV and wrap with strategically placed procedural textures, because I'm only talking about UVs. If you take a noise, for example, that is calculated in world space, and you place it on an object, the UVs don't make a single difference. It doesn't make a difference. So we're predominantly going to talk about UVs, maybe their relationship with the material projections, and we're going to see some very specific cases of objects we need to UV unwrap. So I'm looking at my at the chat. If there's no immediate question, I'm going to move on to start demonstrating. Let me get rid of my balloons and all that. Took me a while to make them, and it was very easy to destroy them. That's how things are. So let's begin. I'm going to go to my Mac screen. Excellent. And everything seems to be working fine. So let's start with simple concepts. And the simplest concept is my favorite object, which is the cube. So number one, procedural objects, they don't have UVs. They do internally, but they don't expose the UVs. So I'm going to press C to make it editable. And now we have this little UV tag. And if you shift double click in the object manager, you can see the UVs, and this is all we see. Right? If you go to the polygon mode, you can go here and select various ones. So this is the typical cubic projection that a cube has, and it's a UVW projection currently, but with a cubic configuration, where essentially every polygon is on itself. So whatever I put here, any image I put here, it's going to be identical all the way around. One thing I like to do here is go and I'm going to go and load. I'm in my other screen loading a UV grid. Here it is. This is just an image I've made, and I'm going to share this as well. I just made it in Illustrator. And if I apply this here, you will see that not there on the whole object. Thanasis, there you go. And I'm going to make this, if you go to the viewport and click texture preview, no scaling, this will give you the maximum resolution available. So you will see that everything is identical. 0, 1 is here. 1.0 is there. 0, 1, 1.0, 0, 1, 1.0. Any changes I make to this image will propagate in exactly the same positions. That's because the UV polygons are stacked on top of each other. So with this little intro, let's go to our UV edit, which have our new tools, and let's take a quick look at how we deal with these polygons. Number one, if you're in polygon mode, you can use your normal tools to move them around. I can go and select a polygon. Now I've selected every single one of them, and that's why you see this over here. So someone would ask, why when you move the UVs downwards, the image moves upwards and opposite? Well, that's because the image should be here. Now let's go and load that image. If you go to the file, you can open a texture, and I'm going to take this out because maybe, just maybe, could be things. So let me just go to my text folder and load the UV grid. There it is. So you can see the UV grid here. And what's happening is, if I take this little corner here and put it on 04, right there, 04, this is 04. Now you see that 04 is here. So the reason why it seems to go the opposite way is that because we're moving the polygons out of the way, a different portion of our texture is being seen through this window. The same thing happens if I scale these down. The more I scale them down, the larger the image becomes, because the polygon occupies a smaller part of our image. Therefore, that image needs to stretch out to cover the whole area. So you can go here and say, okay, I'm going to just make it as small as one tile. There we go. I'm going to make it smaller and smaller and then a bit bigger. I've got multiple monitors, and sometimes my mouse goes out and creates all these problems. But there you go. Now I have one tile. So by moving these polygons around, this allows me to, let's say, crop into any part of the image I want. And UV unwrapping is nothing more than the art of moving the polygons into strategic places so that they only get the part of the image you want. So this polygon here is 0108. Let's go and get this polygon here. That's going to be 0104. There it is. Let's take this polygon here, move it around. I'm going to put it in the middle just to make it a bit more confusing, and so forth. The interface is not extremely clear here because we have so many colors, but you can see I'm just moving around the polygon. And these UV polygons, they just give us the ability to define how much of the real estate of the image is going to be, let's say, distorted, put between these points. Now, here's what happens if I start moving points now, because I've been moving polygons. Look at that. This is going to start distorting now. Now, this is a usual problem we see with UVs. It's such that the algorithm that is used to sort of place them here is, as far as I know, based on triangles or something in that respect. Let me go and cut this and see what happens. I'm going to cut this in the middle. And now we have two triangles. So what do we have here? We have this part here, and we have this part here. You can see these two triangles move separately. So because the underlying algorithm uses triangles, that's why you get that divide right in the middle. Even if it's a quad, if I undo back to the quad, you get that divide. And there's not much you can do. If you do extreme distortions, you are going to have problems like these. So that's all UVs are. It's a strategically placed polygons, UV polygons, in a 2D space, so that each polygon shows in its little real estate the portion of the image we want to put on our rendered polygon over here. And I'm going to get rid of some of these. Let's get rid of our safe frames, for example. Yeah, that's good enough. It's clearer. So let's see how a good UV unwrapping would look like. Let me do an empty canvas here so we can see the polygon. So we have all these polygons here. I can select them, move them, and do all sorts of things. I'm selecting more than one here because the selection just goes through. That's why I was doing the selections over here. So if you select here, you do get a link between the UV editor and the 3D viewport. So I've just selected one. Click E, press E to get your move tool, move it out of the way. Let's go and select another one. No, that's not the one. Let's go and select, there you go, the one on the bottom, and move it out of the way. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 polygons, which is the same number of 3D polygons we have here. So how do we define these configurations, the unwrapping or the UV projection, as we say? Well, it all depends on what you're trying to do. So for this particular cube, because we don't have a definite, let's say, what would be the objective? Let's make this be seamless all the way around. Well, you can't. A watertight model cannot exist as a UV unwrap without a cut. That's it. There's no other way to do it. It's going to wrap around itself if you don't do that. So let's go and create some predefined projections. And this is something I'm going to show you that if you don't know it, it's going to be a surprise. If you select your material, which is currently in UVW projection, and you say, I want a spherical projection, immediately in the UV manager, although you can't select anything, you see that projection. We are seeing the result of a spherical projection on our cube. If you go to flat projection, so here's a flat projection. If we can go and move this projection around, and let's rotate it, and I don't know, move it away. You can see, look at what's happening in the UV view. We move this, and these are the UV polygons projected from this angle. See, it's looking down, so of course we're going to see something like this. It's going, look at those lines. So it looks, of course it's not perspective in here, it's orthographic. So maybe I can switch my camera to isometric. There you go. So this is very similar configuration to what we've seen from the light. So let's go, where's my perspective? There we go. So when you apply a material projection, what you see as a feedback in the UV texture UV editor is the result of the UVs of that projection, because projections and maybe that's not well known, they don't do anything else. They don't really project anything. They just create a UV unwrap from that particular vantage point where the UV here, the UV texture mode, exists based on this configuration here. So I can go to spherical now, and you see it's very different from when it was inside. When you release the mouse, it changes. So this is what the UVs would look if you do a spherical projection with a little spherical projector inside the cube. Quite funky. You can play with this for a long time. But there you go. You see real-time feedback on what this particular projection is doing. And of course you can do cylindrical, cubic. There you go. Cubic is a mess now. Let's go to coordinates and just zero out everything. And what I'm doing here is I'm zeroing out the coordinates of the little projector, right? This little thing here that appears when you select your UV texture mode is our projector. And it has these little green lines and the red lines. One is for U, one is for V, and all that beautiful stuff. You can see the little legend here. V is vertical, U is horizontal, and it goes from bottom left all the way up to 1. So 0 for the and 1 for the V, and 0 and 1 for the U. And this is called a normalized coordinate system, whereas everything happens within a 0 to 1 constraint. Now you would ask me, what if you load an image that is not a square, that's a rectangle? Well, nothing. It's just this is gonna adjust to the shape, but it's still going to be from the bottom left 0, 0 to the bottom right 0, 1. It doesn't matter how big it is. It can be 3,000 kilometers, which is something like 1,800 miles. Anyway, 3,000 kilometers wide and 1 centimeter tall. It will still have that configuration from bottom left 0, 0 to bottom right 1 and 1. So the defining factor is how much of that long polygon that long image, the 3,000 miles times 1 centimeter, how much of that real estate each polygon sits on. So I had to clear my throat, sorry. Now, here's the question. What happens when a UV polygon lies outside of this tile? This is where this parameter comes in. If you go to the material and go down here to the tag and go to tile, this is what tiling does. Tiling actually repeats the image. So if I go to this, tiling, every time you reach 1, a new image will appear and a new image will appear. And let's go and try that. I'm going to go here and set this to UVW so I can play around with these little buggers. And I'm just going to go to my polygon mode and select them all. And let's go and do some sort of projection. I'm going to use the cubic, the same one that existed. And watch this. I'm going to take this UV polygon and I move it out. And you can see that as it's moving through, it's moving into another area that actually has a repeat of the first texture. So although we don't see these repeats, they exist. There you go. Look at that. The little green bit on this side, and then it starts again and again and again. As far as I know, if you turn off the tiling, that shouldn't happen. And you can see it reflected here. No tiling means that we only have one tile, and anything within the actual normal tile will show the texture. There you go. That's why we don't get this. And the same applies when you use any of the other projections. That's why we use tiling when we want to confine something in one specific place. So a good sort of demonstration of the application is, for example, to get a default sphere, make it editable, put this on here and get rid of the cube. All right. So what you're seeing here, and that's why we have this distortion now that's introduced. Even if you render it, you're going to get some of this distortion, right, wherever you have these small triangles. And the reason is that all these polygons have exactly the same size, so they occupy the same amount on here. And the only ones that sort of are a bit not distorted but odd are these ones up here. I think these ones on the bottom. Let's go, where are they? Where are you? I need to select it. Yeah, I hadn't selected it. And these ones over here, you can see they're lacking continuity. Look, the 9 is cut, the 0 point whatever is cut. That's because there's no UV polygon here. So anything that's within that area of the image, this little bit here, it doesn't exist on your object, on your surface, because there's no polygon to take this image and put it on the surface of your object. So as you can see in the 3D viewport now, we have these white lines over here. And if I get rid of this, you'll see them clear. These white lines are the cuts, actually. And this is the way the interface is telling us, or seams, right? These are called seams because there's a cut in the UV, but there's no cut in the actual geometry. So question, is there a way to see the image in the UV map to align faster the polygon with it? I don't... the image in the UV map to align. I don't understand exactly the question. If you can rephrase, I'll try to reply. I apologize. So the sphere, because... Hello? Oh, I lost feedback from my earphones and I thought you couldn't hear me. Okay. Oh, scary things today. So because a sphere is a watertight object, it doesn't have any physical openings. We have to unwrap it by adding these cuts, just like the example of my little icosahedron triangle thing I did at the beginning. So what was I trying to show here? Yeah, let's take this material and put it here. Now, what if someone said, listen, I want to have the minimum amount of distortion on this image, but I would be willing to sacrifice, let's say, one cut. And now we're getting into the nitty-gritties of planning, because planning is a huge part of proper UV and wrapping. UDIMs, I'll give you some information about UDIMs, but it's you can do UDIMs, but it's a manual process. My question is, have you read about UDIMs? There's a really good article somewhere, and I'm going to tell you a couple of things here. So here's the thing. If I want one cut, let's assume that I want only this cut here, the one that exists already. I'm taking my edge and I'm going to find that cut somewhere. There it is. So here's this edge. It goes all the way down here. How do I make it so that I don't have all the other cuts over here? That is a problem. That is not an easy thing to figure out, because I can go and start connecting, and I can use my snapping tools, for example, and I can connect this. I can move this to this, and this to this, and this to this, and this to this, and so forth. And although we're going to create fewer cuts, I'm actually causing a different problem here. I'm creating huge distortion. So this can't be a proper solution for this. There's a huge problem doing it using this method. And it doesn't matter how much you're going to relax these and so forth. You are going to introduce a bunch of problems. So let me give you a couple of solutions. These are not real solutions. These are just ideas by which you can go and cut this little bugger. Now, one of the things I usually do is create an initial UV projection that will give me a good starting point, right? Because using these tools here, we're going to see every single one of these tools here today. We'll try and retain the cuts if we're going to do relaxation and stuff like that. And by the way, these are the old Relax UV tools, as we call them old, but the algorithms are the same, whether we use the new tools or the old tools. So let me show you what the first approach in something like this. I'm going to create my distortion mainly on the poles. So I'm going to go to my top view. I'm going to view it from here. I'm going to select all my polygons, and I'm going to go to my projection and use a frontal projection. Now we can see the sphere from the top. Now let's go and see how this looks like over here. You can see that if you look at it from the top, it doesn't look distorted, but then as you come to the side, we get these weird distortions. So what I'm going to try and do here, I don't even know if it's going to work. I haven't tried this, but it's going to be interesting to say the least. I'm going to double click to create a cut. And just with this cut, all you have to do is click on the UV and wrap. The UV and wrap does a combination of things. And all you need to know is that it remembers the selection or lack thereof and just cuts. It does actually the following thing. It uses the cut selected edges and applies, I think, an ABF algorithm to it. ABF and LCM, Google them. So I'm just going to do an unwrap. So again, I've got nothing selected, no polygons or edges. And if you want to have all polygons selected, you can do that. I'm going to show you the alternative in a second. Double click with your move tool to create an edge cut and then click on UV and wrap. Now we have two things like that look like circles. Now what's happening here is that it's trying to make this with the least amount of distortion. How do we see distortion? Well, since a couple of versions ago, you can go and see the distortion. And the distortion is represented by red when you have compressed polygons and blue where you have stretched polygons. And depending on how intense that is, you will see that if I take a point and start doing something crazy, it becomes quite intense because the distortion changes. Imran, brother, how are you? The presentation is going to, I mean, this is recorded anyway, so you can backtrack or stay with us in real time live so you can ask your questions. So what did I do? Yeah, I need to go back to my distortion here. And where is my there you go. Sorry, I need to turn it on, distortion on, and just make it a bit dimmer. So you can see that a possible solution for this problem could be just to cut across the equator. And again, you need to be able to make a decision, an executive decision for that matter. If you want to make fewer cuts and have more distortion, or if you want to have a lot of distortion, the opposite, no distortion, but with more cuts. So, of course, the question now becomes, how can I, let's say I don't care about continuity. I just want to unwrap this with the minimum amount of distortion. How do you go about doing that? Now, conceptually, it's not very hard, but we need to add a lot of cuts. So let's identify what are the parts that need to be cut. And these are basically I'm going to do a ring selection, these, and these. Watch this now. Look at what I've done for this set of polygons. And if you want to confine whatever we're going to do to these polygons, you can always go and use your move tool and double click. So now only these polygons, because by definition, it's the opposite. When you are in edge mode, by definition, restrict to polygon selection, well, that's what I always put on. So if I press OK now, watch this. I think I confused you. Let's do this one more time. I did a ring selection of all these vertical parts. I moved to my edge mode, and I'm going to tell the UV and wrap to cut these edges. Number one, this is what happens. Number two, I'm going to go and cut one more edge. Click here because I want to open it. It still has a loop wraps around. Watch this now. What you see here is a fully undistorted UV projection of this particular configuration. So let's take the two hemispheres. This is the one with the least cuts and the maximum distortion. This is the one with the maximum cuts, but no distortion at all. We have an example of the two extreme, let's say, boundaries of UV and wrapping here. Okay? So when we start doing a few more applications, I've got some models here, I've got some difficult ones, some that can take you hours. We're going to look at a lot of stuff that I hope you will find applicable on your projects. But I think this could have been the example I could have led with. this is exactly the same topology, unwrapped in the two extreme ways. Minimum cuts, maximum distortion, minimum distortion, maximum cuts. So, if you're having sort of a hard time with UVs, let me show my beautiful face here. I do suggest you start creating things like these, all right? And I dropped something, whatever. I'm going to pick it up later. I think it was my balloon or my cone. I have a tutorial on how to make, if you look at my YouTube channel, I made a little tutorial on how to project on a globe, a proper globe, and make a toy. So you can print it and then cut it out and make a sort of like a puzzle out of it, where you can fold it and it looks like a proper Earth. And yeah, check it out. It's another insight on how we use UVs and baking and so forth. So try and do it in a tactile manner, because what paper is a very good indicator of what is possible and what is not possible. For example, a single fold, paper has no problem. It doesn't distort the paper. There are no, it won't break the surface of the paper. If you want to make a cone out of the paper, you cannot make a cone unless you remove some of the parts or you overlap things. So if I asked you to create a cone out of a piece of paper without overlapping or cutting out any paper, you wouldn't be able to do that. That's impossible. That's literally impossible. If it was made of latex, you would have, by putting your finger through here and pushing up until it stretches into a cone. And the best way to understand UVs is to treat a piece of paper as your texture and see how that would be wrapped. What is the simplest way to wrap it on something like a little football or a weird, obscure shape, and see if it can actually be done without cutting out pieces or the need to stretch it and maybe tear it. And buy a set of balloons. Actually, they're quite huge. These balloons are quite fun. My son went nuts because it's literally bigger than him. So let's see if we have any questions. Yeah, small community. Spread the word. When somebody is able to display the distortion, shouldn't it be mathematically correct the UVs for no distortion, considering that works without adding additional seams? It then be able to mathematically correct? Well, no, because this is the thing. There is no way to avoid either distortion or cuts and everything in between. It all depends on the model. So there is some UV unwrapping dedicated software does a good job of assessing what to stretch, what to cut, how to do it, and so forth. But it's the task is never easy. Even the software has to make some educated guesses about what you're trying to achieve. And if you're doing organic objects and all that, well, imagine you're using, the question I get very often is, what about the volume bill and volume measure? Well, you can't really UV unwrap these things, right? It doesn't really make sense. Use procedural textures which are object-based or space world-based, like noise and stuff like that. Now, if you literally need to get a mesh and paint on it to put some detail, that's actually a different story. With the procedural mesh, if it's changing around and the polygon count is changing and so forth, then the UV unwrapping needs to be recalculated for every single frame. But if you want to make a very high polygon model and start drawing stuff, then that's not a difficult thing. And the technology that Maxon acquired a few years ago, which is basically the let me go here, right click and go material tags, set UVW from projection, and the automatic packed UVs. This will give you a not so bad, this is an automatic unwrap here. And you do get distortion and you do get some cuts. One thing you need to remember is that the automatic UV unwrap is I'm not showing you my screen. I'll do it again. So let's do this again. Where's my Mac? Here it is. That's funny. I apologize. I got it. I caught it early today, right? So let me go again and do this. So we have the same sphere as I had earlier with my little thing here. And if you go to tags and say material tag and set UV from projection, go to the little gear. And you can do all the other ones, but the automatic packed UVs is an auto unwrapping and cutting algorithm. But it's aimed at 3D painting, right? So it introduces both stretching and cutting, and its objective, the ideal objective for this algorithm, is to utilize as best as possible your UV tile and retain the scales to a point where when you paint on it in a 3D paint program like Body Paint, or do sculpting and stuff like that, you will get the best the best real estate out of your tile, so you don't waste a lot of areas. Now, I found that in many cases it does excellent. It produces excellent results. I have an example here. This one over here. So this was sent to me by someone. If you're here, identify yourself, please. And I'm going to get rid of this. And this was the UV unwrapping we had, all right? And it's bent and so forth. Although this is a rigid object, it's got hard cuts and all that. And the question was, how do you go about unwrapping this? I'll get rid of my safe frame. Shift V to bring up. If you press Shift V, you bring up the, what are these called? The viewport, configure, and then you get rid of your safe frames. So, funny enough, this particular object is ideal to use the automatic unwrapping. Now, the same algorithm can be accessed when you have the object and the UV selected. If you go to automatic UV and packed and apply this, there you go. So, as you can see, it's aimed at 3D painting, but this particular model only takes 2 seconds to unwrap, and it's going to give you a very decent unwrap for what you're trying to do. So if you go to distortion, you'll see it literally has 0 distortion. So rule number 1, if you take anything from this presentation, is always first use the automatic UV unwrap from here, or right click, material, set UV double from projection, gear icon, automatic UV packed, bonk, and this. Right? Slightly different because the parameters are ever so slightly different with the spacing and all that. As you can see here, it allows for a bit more spacing. So it's got some, it was added a few parameters in the last couple of versions for stretching and so forth. So if you allow stretching, it will introduce some distortion, but it will take advantage more of your UV tile. So we have all these nice little tools. Now the question is, I don't want to do it automatically because X, Y, and Z, and Horizon is a great piece of software. No kidding. It has enormous amount of tools. In specific cases, it can give you excellent results. But I haven't found, in my use, right? I don't do this on such a deep level, in the sense that unless someone sends me something like this, I don't have to deal with UVs as my day job. So I've been able to handle anything just by using Cinema 4D's UV tools, right? I'm sure there are better ways of doing things, right? I've tried it. It has some great algorithms about using the same UV set for identical objects or identical parts of the object. So there are a lot of things. It's a dedicated UV tool. So let's see, how would we go about unwrapping this? So I'm going to delete everything, including the UVs, and tell you how I would go and manually unwrap this right from scratch. And I'll begin with the following question. What is my main concern about this? Am I okay if I don't have continuity in certain places? I know that I can't have continuity everywhere. So what is my main concern? So the question you first ask is, do I want less distortion, or do I want fewer cuts? So my decision is that because this is a hard surface model and you already have a sort of a hard cut between these, I'm going to try and isolate as many of these surfaces as possible. That's not necessary, but let's try that, okay? Let's try that, and let's keep as much of it as possible. Number one, I can split it in the back and half of it, and the back and half of it the front. I can detach the bottom to begin with. So let's start with that. Why not? Let's start with that. First of all, let's get our initial projection. Let's go to my front over here. Let's turn on grow shading lines, and here's my back, front, whatever. I don't care. I can flip them around. Just put it in your screen like this. Make sure it's an orthographic projection. And I need to go to projection here, and I would gladly do a frontal projection, but without a UV tag, none of these things work. So let's go and add a UV tag. So material tag, set UV double point projection. I can use the frontal or anything, and then just click on frontal. It doesn't make a difference. So there you go. So here's my initial projection, and they're all on top of each other, and it's correct. So what I want to do now is let's detach the front. So let's go and find it. UVs is all about selections. Now you can see I'm clipping, so press Command or Control D to go to your project settings. Go to your view clipping and set this to tiny or small. If you're tiny and you go away, it could disappear, but I think tiny is the best one for what we're trying to do. Now in polygon mode, you don't need this. This just changes the mode of the coordinate manager. If you want to do certain things, for what we're doing, it doesn't make a difference. Move tool, edge selection, and let's go and select flat edges. Actually, I'm going to use my favorite tool. Phone break selection is the ideal to select faces. Polygon mode, and I'm selected with one click or the front. So we know that this is straight because the frontal projection gave us a very nice orthographic view. So let's just move this out of the way. So E for move tool, let's put it here. I'm happy. Now let's go to the other side, and let's use our phone break selection and select all the back. Good. Let's use E and move it here. Now one little detail is that I'm deselecting everything, and I'm going to put this to filled polygons. The blue and the gray indicate that here we're viewing the back side of the polygons, and here we're viewing the front side. It's like the normals. When we select the orange is the good side, and the blue is the sort of bad side, the opposite surface. Here, the blue is the back side. It's very easy to correct this. If you double click and you mirror, then it will just flip it around. So I've detached those parts. Now you can see that the seams are starting to appear here. Now someone would say, yeah, but you know, I want to be able to have some parts attached. Let's make this whole, everything around here, I want it as a single ribbon. How do I do that? Well, let's go and try that. We've already detached most of them. You can see the seams here. So let's go and find these. One thing I like to do is double click here and say hide selected, and double click here and hide selected. And it will hide it from the 3D geometry as well, which makes it extremely convenient so you can see what's left. So I can hide this one as well. This is fine. Move it out of the way, flip it to become gray, and go and hide it. Good. So now we have the rest. Now I wanted to unwrap it as a ribbon, but you can see that it's not quite. It's two pieces, right? It's the inner piece, there you go, the inner piece, and the outer piece. So let's go and split them. It's as simple as that. So let's go to our 3D view and select these edges. Double click to select the whole thing. Let's go to the other side. Where I'm double clicking is where I'm going to use my X-Acto knife to cut it. Boom, boom, right? With these cut here, I'm just going to click, nothing else. I'm just going to click UV and wrap. So what it's done here, it's folded the top part. Let me show you exactly what it has done here. This is the outer part, and because, oh come on, stop deselecting. Because it goes all the way around, look at that. It's going all the way around, all the way around, all the way around. It doesn't have a cut to open this up, right? This is like an elastic band. If you want to stretch an elastic band on a flat surface, you need to cut it. Right? You can't, otherwise it's going to wrap around. There you go, elastic band. So let's choose where I want to cut it. I'm going to go right there at the bottom, right there, because this is going to be the least visible part. Choosing your cuts has to do with which parts of the model you're trying to cut, which is going to be the least visible. So get your edge mode, move selection, double click here, and just do this again. UV and wrap. There you go, two pieces. On top and the bottom. You can see I double clicked and it looped around the invisible part. So let me undo. No, I only want this side. not double click. So I'm going to click here and Command Shift click here. So I've only got one cut here. If you want to see where it is, look at it. This looks odd, right? That's why it's good to select in the 3D view. UV and wrap, boom. There you go. That's it. It's one ribbon. Now you want to align it. Now, because internally the UV and wrap uses the ABF algorithm, the ABF is more for organic surfaces. And, you know, this is a very good way to unwrap heads and so forth. If you want this to be a bit more straight, all you have to do is select these polygons. So get your polygon selection tool, get your move tool, double click here, or select island. You can select connected or whatever you want to do. Let's go closer so you can see it better. Let's move this out of the way. Go to the relax in polygon mode with everything selected. Set this to LSCM and set auto realign. Apply a few times and there you have it. Now you can see that there is some distortion here. Let's try the other algorithm, ABF, apply. It's a bit better. Whenever you see distortion appearing, that means that there is some element of this that needs to be, let me say, relieved a bit. You need to see where something here, one of these polygons, maybe there's a rounding, folds in itself. Now, I don't know what it is. I didn't make this model myself, but there could be one of these polygons which is maybe causing this. But I haven't made it, so I don't know exactly what the details are. Now, of course, this is not a huge issue, and you can go and straighten some of these lines, or you can even align this, or use one of the other algorithms to do it anyway. But nonetheless, because my objective was to cut this into pieces, if I go now and unhide all, so show all, now I have all these things cut just by using this UV and wrap. Now, let me read some questions and see before they leave my list. Is there a way to see a texture atlas in the texture view editor window to align the polygon? Yeah, of course. You just go here. If you want to load an image, you are late. So you open here, you go open texture, you open anything you want or any number of textures. And you go here and you find them in a list and you can see exactly where they are. So the texture atlas is here. And then you can say just Cinema 4D's UV grid or empty canvas. I hope that answered your question. So what if we have a building with windows and we want to put a building texture on there? Is that crazy? Yes, it is crazy. I need to show my face to do that. Okay. Yes, that is crazy. You can do it. You can go and unwrap windows and buildings and all that. But if it's a lot of windows and they're different and all that, you just have to go one by one and do it. So let me go back to the Mac. So Randy, take care. Watch the rest and post any questions. So cutting and unwrapping for these kind of models is, I would say, the overall recipe. Now, there's one final step, which we're going to visit in a second, which is, all right, I've cut everything I wanted. I feel so cool about this. How do I put them in my tile? Because that's the important part. How do we fit these in the tile? That's called packing. And currently the best one is the geometric packing. And basically, you have to tell it, do you want to preserve orientation? For example, do you mind if this is turned at 90 degrees, for example, to fit better and stuff like that? Depending on what you're doing, sometimes you care, sometimes you don't care. I'm going to say, just for the sake of this example, I want to preserve orientation. So everything is going to stay in the orientation they have. And equalize island size is another important one. What it will do, it will scale them so that when we project the image, it's going to look equally scale the image on every part of our object. If we're going to do 3D painting, that's actually not required that much, because the projection painting you're doing is what defines the size of your texture. So you can get away with that. But usually you equalize island size because you want to be able to drop one texture and not have more dense details on one. So I'm deselecting everything and I'm doing an apply here. And it's going to go through, it's going to find the outlines. So because I kept this one over here and I kept the island sizes equal, I can't use all my tile. Whether I like it or not, unfortunately, that's the case. So how you can solve this? Well, the best way is to break this down. This particular one, it's to break it down. So let's go and find it. You can see it, here it is. I'm going to break it where the corners are. That's the most logical step. So double click on this corner here, go to the other one, double click on this one here as well, shift double click, and just press UV unwrap. Right, so it's going to do the best it can to unwrap these, and then on UV packing I'm just going to apply one more time. So deselect everything and apply. Let's see, there you go. So now we have a better overall let's say occupation of whatever is happening. We have more real estate per UV polygon based on our image. So we're taking advantage of our resolution. That's the more of our UV tile we're covering with polygons, we are taking advantage of the full resolution of our image. We're not being wasteful. Controlling texel density has to do basically with the size of your polygons. We don't texels. I mean, it's a semantical difference based on the pixel size of your of each pixel that appears within each polygon. Right. So if you want to increase your texel density, you make your UV polygons bigger, and vice versa. So that is the way to do it. And the terminology is not clear in Cinema 4D between texels and pixels, but under certain conditions, it's sort of the same thing. It represents exactly the same thing. So what was I going to say here? Now, as I was doing something here, you can see that this lost its shape, right? Now, that's not too much of a problem because maybe we won't be able to fix it because it's these lines here and small mathematical errors that are going to cause problems. But there is an easy solution to this. You select these polygons, you identify where they are. Sometimes the solution is too simple, right? And if you go to your front view, so let's change the camera to front view and press S. This is what we want. And if you make a frontal projection, that's it. There you go. So sometimes people are looking for a way to unwrap something in a certain way, when actually the answer is, why don't you just, use the topology itself? So the front view of these polygons is precisely the accurate UV projection for these polygons. So that's why we use a frontal projection for that. Now, we're going to go into pins and all sorts of other interesting things. So let me see, because I don't want to lose my my train of thought. And whenever I say that, it's because precisely I've lost my train of thought. All right, let me stretch here and say hi. How's everyone? It's great. We have 68 people watching, and it's, and 288 playbacks. I love that. So the people that are watching it in playback now, at some point, are going to come to this point of time, and I'm going to say, thank you very much. So that is for the people, whatever, time travel. It always messes with my brain. I've been watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. later, and it's so funny. Dimensions and time. Oh, yeah, it's so funny. It's ridiculous, but it's funny. So let's go back to UVs. A bit more straightforward than time travel. So this is a typical hard surface model. Although it has some features which need special care, it's still a hard surface model. Now, there's another sort of methodology we use where it has a bit more distortion, fewer cuts, and that's for organic models. So let me read. When relaxed UV is done, it is very common that UVs come out with the normal inverted. Is there any way to avoid them? In some cases, I notice the error when I'm texturing. No, that's why part of your workflow should be to go to View and look at the filled polygons, which I just turned off, and make sure that they're all gray. Nothing's inverted now. So if you have blue, that means they're inverted. And there's no automatic way. I was thinking of a script to identify that. There are some intrinsic difficulties to find that, but currently you just go visually. And if the lines are messing with you, you can turn off the line. So let me just reverse this. And even if this is very small, right? If you get, because you can't see it's blue now because of the lines, right? So if you turn off your mesh, you get a better view now, and especially if you amplify this color. So you can see the inverted normals over here, and you can see them in the viewport as well. All right. So if you want to identify anything, just remove the materials, set it to filled polygons, and you get an immediate view on which ones are reversed. So then you can go here, you can double click, and you can mirror it, and now everything is nice and gray. So let's see, any more questions? Right. Now let's go to an organic shape, and let's do some stuff there, play around. And then we're going to go to an extremely difficult case, which requires time and planning, the tank turret. And I selected that because it has a particularly difficult geometry. So the one I like to do, because I did it in my tutorial as well, I'm going to do a quick pass here, is the human, right? Or the dinosaur. And I think bust is the one. All right, so male bust. And let's close this bugger here. Let's get rid of the symmetry. Let's go here and turn on my UV mesh and get rid of this and this, right? So everything's done. How do you know which cuts line up with each other? In the 2D, in the UV editor or 3D editor? If you can clarify that question, RS Graphics, please. So in this particular case, we can start number one, material, and do our little automatic UV packed. So it's not bad, all right? It's not what we expected. It's not bad if you want to do some 3D painting, but it doesn't know it's a face. That's a bit of a problem. And we got something here which I don't know what this is, but there you go. Something here. Oh yeah, it has to do with the concavity of this polygon. When you have these kind of situations, just go and move the point so that it's not concave, so not inside these sort of weird triangles. Just move it out and you've solved that. So a bit of manual moving with points. So can you visit multiple UV layouts per one object? So confusing, especially with third-party shaders like Redshift. Well, you can create more than one UVs. That is mostly I guess a Redshift issue. Cinema 4D has a built-in method where if you have a material and in UV mapping, it will use the UV map to its right. So yeah, that should be the. Let's try this. Right, let's try this. That's a good question, actually. I'm going to go here and do some sort of, let's say, cubic projection for this. I'm going to do another UV unwrap, and I'm going to make it a frontal, all right? This weird frontal projection here. And make it a bit bigger. There you go. And I'm going to use two materials, and I need to use a grid of sorts. So let me just open this and load that nice little UV grid. And good. So here we are. So let's see which one this is. You can see that when I move the material, it uses the UV to its right. So if I want to create another material that has a slight difference, all right, let's go and add some sort of, I don't know, colorizer. And there you go, black and white. And let's create another material here. Let's put it here and put it on the left. What you will see, this overrides the other one, so I have to confine it to a selection. But the one on the left uses this UV, and the one on the right uses this UV. So if you have multiple UVs, it uses the one on the right. The Redshift, I don't really know how a Redshift material does this. So you can go to the Redshift forums and ask, and I'm sure they're going to reply. I haven't gone that far. So let's go back to the original little thingy. I'm going to leave this so we can see the distortions and all that. Get rid of that, and there we go. So here's the unwrap, the automatic unwrap we have. The best way to start again with a face and stuff like that is to start, let's say, from the front view. There you go, front view. And do a frontal projection. This will give you sort of a good idea of what's going on. Now, in terms of heads and organic stuff, let's first open up the model as much as we can in parts where it doesn't matter. So the base is the least, I don't care about the base. I don't care about this. So I can go and just UV unwrap and get it out of the way, right? So there is. Just double click here, move it out of the way. I don't even want to see that. Now, let's go to the rest of the head. When we are unwrapping heads, usually what's not visible is the backside of the head. Now, unless it's me, where the backside of my head is the most important part, most humans have hair. It's, some people have hair, some people have brains. That's the unfortunate thing. So you create a cut where the hairline begins, right? Not my hairline, by the way. My hairline begins on my back, but that's a different story. I don't want to get into that. So double click just to make sure that I'm confining it here. It won't really damage this, just move it around and it irritates me. So we have these polygons selected. That line in edge mode is the cut. Go to UV Unwrap and tell it to restrict to polygons, just because I like that mode, and press OK. So what this has done now is that it's unwrapped our polygons. It's a bit muggy, so I'm going to turn off the filled polygons to see this. It's unwrapped it the best way it could. Let's go and see the distortion. And we're getting distortions around the ears and so forth. So the ears, again, depending on what model it is, they may not be that visible. And the topology is a bit funny. You can never get totally undistorted unless you want to cut their ears off. I'm very fond of my ears, but I'm going to cut this gentleman up. But for now, what I'm going to do is, first of all, I want to align this. And there's a couple of versions ago, they introduced, you select one edge and you say Align UV Island. And that will put it either horizontal or vertically, depending on what the selected edge was. And now you know it's 90 degrees. You can go to your UV gizmo and rotate and press Shift to quantize. And there you go. So now we know it's nicely placed. I can put it at 0.5, which is the middle. So now I know it's aligned. I can double click on this and put this in 0.5. And that's right here in the middle. So there are ways to, put things in the proper way. Now let's go and see what other things we can do when it comes to things like a face. Now, one thing that a lot of people do is cut another little bit here. Now, what I want you to observe is how much more blue or red this thing becomes. We're going to lose its position, but I don't care. So let's go down here just under the chin, select this, and then go and do Command Shift and click this. And we're going to cut this. But I don't want it to realign. Just want it to open right here. So that looks interesting. Let's see what happens if I relax it. If I had the auto realign, it would actually do some sort of relaxation. But for now, you see that. Let me undo and let me redo. Very little stuff. And that's because still the biggest tension is not generated down here. The biggest tension is generated around the nose. It's generated around other aspects of the face. And again, some of these things are insurmountable. There's not much you can do other than cutting the nose off. All right. So let's see if we can just release some more of these. So experimentally, you go and you start selecting edges and you're cutting to see if this is going to improve what you're doing. Maybe this one here is the defining factor. A bit better. Maybe we need to get rid of the ears. No, please, not the ears. Let me go and do that in the UV. So I'm going around here. I'm actually going to get this edge. I'm shift selecting here to cut this. Command Shift click to select that. Shift click, Command Shift click. Selecting is a big part of UVs. And I've created the circle, right? Now, I want the same on the other side. Here we can use the mirror. Automatically, it's set to the proper plane. So now let's go and cut these. And let me go and do an ABF and auto realign and see what happens. So what you're seeing now is that we do have, the ears have their distortion because they're concave, but we're sort of relieving some of the pressure that's coming up on these sides. Now, if this person has a full set of hair, you can go and add even more cuts in parts where his hair is going to be visible. So again, let's go here and do that. What I'm doing here is not a correct unwrapping. But now we have this problem, the overlapping problem, which there are certain ways you can use to fix, which I'm going to show you right now. It's just how you can go incrementally for something which is difficult, more difficult, and slice it down incrementally to see what provides you with a better result. So in this particular case, I need to pin some things down and stretch whatever else is, stretchable. So what does that mean? Remember when I talked about the skin of the goat? Well, in order to, or any animal back in the hunter-gatherer days, you'd have to pin down the animal to stretch it, right? So the same thing we need to do over here. So what I'm going to try and do here, just for fun, is move this little point up here. Move this little point up here. Select these 2 points and pin them. So regardless of what I'm going to do now, these 2 points are going to remain in that relative position. And everything is going to try and unwrap with these 2 things stuck there. Now, it's going to be funky, so prepare for a bit of fun. So I'm going to use pinpoint selection here, because it pins these things. If you don't do that, it's not going to pin it. And I'm going to apply. So you can see it did rotate, but the relative position stayed where it was. If I turn off the auto realign, it's not going to do that. So it's trying to stretch it by keeping those 2 points where they are. So maybe you say, okay, let's go and pin some more things. I don't want to move his face, right? Let's say I'm happy with this dude's face here, right? So let's select all these points and let's mirror them by clicking on the actual button, and let's add these pins. Now again, with these selected, I'm going to apply. So you can see now it's trying to unfold to relax everything else, except for whatever is pinned. Now, because I want to avoid this, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to select these points as well, because assuming that I'm happy with these. Deselect these, and let's mirror, let's add pins. Anything you want it to stay the same way, you just pin it down, and you just apply relaxation on the rest, and hopefully they're going to fall in place. So what we have here, let me clear all the pins, is I would never do that to anyone, but this is a lesson. So that's the incremental way to create more complex unwrapping. Now, some software allow you to move this point, and while it's moving, everything organically adapts around it and add pins and so forth. Well, we don't have that, okay? So suck it up, and this is the method. Pinning is very powerful when you're doing things. I'm going to show you a simple trick when you want to unwrap a cube. It's interesting to see it with the cube and unwrap everything else. So that's how you use pins. Now, number one, let me check the time. Ooh, good. 1 hour, 20 minutes. Let's see the questions now. Good. How do you know which cuts line up with each other? I didn't understand that. So, there you go. If I want to line up cuts so I can try and have continuity, is there an easy way to identify where the corresponding edge is in the UV layout? Yeah, you can see it in the 3D. So, for example, if I want to go and connect, let's say these 2, right? And let's assume I know where this is, but I don't know where that is. Well, it's not difficult. Just select one of them. Go and find it in the 3D view. If you press S here, it's going to appear. And if you select in the 3D view now, it selects both. There you go. Now both are selected. And that's a good thing about this interchangeability between the 2. Now there's one more way. In the view, you have UV connectivity. And this will give you a color coding of what connects to what. So the yellow connects to the yellow. So you know the ear is there. The orange, let me turn off the other colors. There you go. That's even clearer. So the reds connect to the reds, the yellows to the yellows, the whites, and the whites are seams, and so forth. So that is the connectivity is what's going to give you the idea. But again, in my favorite way is, I don't know which part of the ear this is. Select it here, find it in the 3D view. There it is. Select it in the 3D view. Now you have both of these selected. Now I know that it's this part. Well, thank you for connectivity that has the same colors. And where's the other ear? Select it. Is it the ear? It is the ear. Well, that's interesting. I am missing something obvious here. I'm selecting an edge and I'm not seeing its counterpart over there. Imagine that. Yeah, this should work. But anyhow, let me see if there's any particular reason why this is not working. Let me select a few others. Oh yeah, there was some, I don't know why, but now it works. Anyway, deselect and go and select it again. And there you go, the continuity. Sorry for that. I apologize out of politeness. It's not my fault. So there you go. This one and this one are connected. So that should be the answer. So question, Dominic. Let's see. Why can't nobody not relax the ears to the amount where there's no distortion? There is no distortion. No, there is no. As I said before, get a make an ear out of paper, right? And then try and stretch it out. You're going to tear it. If you make it out of latex, it's going to stretch. That's going to introduce distortion. There is no way to unwrap a surface that has more than one directional folds, right? I need to show this again, right? Let's go. There you go, that's my camera. So, surface, if it has one dimensional fold, you can unwrap it without any distortion, right? If it has two-dimensional folds, like, for example, a sphere, which wraps that way and that way, anything you can't do without a paper without wrinkling it will introduce distortion or cuts. Done. That's it. You can test it, but what a software can do is relax it to the best possible state. All the distortion cannot be removed if you don't add cuts. If you do have an example of a surface that sort of folds around itself, right? It's not a single fold, that you have unwrapped without any distortion, give it to me, because it's sort of like traveling through time. That's how impossible it is. So let's see. But I'm up for the challenge. Let's see. So yeah, Dominic, send something through if you have a model that's unwrapped in that way. So let's continue. You can use a magnet. Yes, of course. There are certain tools like the magnet tool here, especially if you have everything selected or deselected for that matter. And with the magnet tool, you can use that to fine-tune certain areas. For some reason, it's not always aligning. Click and drag to make it bigger. But anyhow, you can use this to do your dirty business. But it's interesting if you're doing organic stuff, just to clear things up. Right here. And thanks for the mention, Lopolo AV Production. Trying to get seamless crosshatch pattern on a contoured cylinder from a CAD model. Have it unwrapped, but having trouble with the seam. Yeah, if you want to send something, what's the best way? Do you have Dropbox? Send a Dropbox link or something like that. And I'll see if I can pick it up as we are now. So thanks for the paper demo. I destroyed a piece of paper for you. I just did it for you. So can you show tricks on how to transfer UVs from high poly models to low poly or faster workflow? Sorry, Norris gone. No, no can do. So send your letters to Maxon. That's a very good thing you can. We do have VAMP. Let me do this. We do have VAMP. So let's see. What was I going to show here? I've been moving around things because I'm with the magnet tool because I forgot what I was going to show. So let me think. We did the mail. Okay, let's go into some other. I talked about different. Well, there you go. I'm back on my thought train. So number one, let's go to something sort of intermediate between organic and hard surface. Now, a hammer is hard, we know that, but it's not always a hard surface. It does have some sort of curvatures and all that. So in this particular case, this is neatly unwrapped, but we're going to go and do it ourselves, right? So 3 objects, the wedge and all that. I don't need the wedge. I mean, the wedge is here. I'm going to show you how to do that anyway. So let's turn on. I like hidden lines. It just obscures everything else I don't want to see. I go to my options and I get rid of my safe frames, and in my filter I get rid of work planes, horizons, and all that kind of stuff. There you go. So it's nice and clean. So let's get rid of these. We're going to do our own interpretation, so I don't really care about these things. Let's select them all. Let's go tags, material tags, set UV W. Number one, always try the automatic packed UVs. Oh, I love this. Yeah, I'm not going to do it because I think this did a better job. Our stream has ended. Bye. No. So let's go and select all these and do a frontal projection. And yeah, of course, doesn't work on more than one. So frontal on everything, please. Frontal, everything, frontal. You can't have more than one object selected. Frontal. I'm just destroying. I could have done it with a single click by selecting the material set UVW, but I like to do things in a non-standard way. So let's go and find the wedge first of all. Let's make everything else disappear. And I like to use a solo sometimes. So you set this to solo. So any object you select appears and appears. Oh, no, it's not hierarchy. So viewport, you know something? Where are we? Off. I'm just going to hide them. I woke up very early today, so forgive me. So here's a typical example of an object, which is, it's a normal hard surface. Now, how do you unwrap this? That's this is actually, I think, the most exciting part. So for this particular object, we don't care about having too much continuity. It's a hammer. It's a pin. But what if you want the maximum continuity? Well, these kind of objects, what I like to do, it's a cubic style object. So I want to, and my feedback here seems to show that my stream has gone down. Let's see. Did my stream go down for a second? If someone can post, one of the 58 kind people that are there. Sorry for the break. Okay, it's back again. Yeah, there's some, I don't know which part of the internet that was. Probably on YouTube side. Okay. Good. It went down for me as well, in the sense that my feedback wasn't working. So which part did you miss? Let me start again with the wedge, right? The wedge. So this is a cubic. It is a wedge, but it's actually a cubic object. It has the same configuration, 6 sides with some rounding. And the best way to unwrap something like this is to unwrap it like a cube, the cross configuration. So let's go and do that. It does have some rounding, and the rounding it has is in 2 dimensions. It has a bend this way, so you can see one bend is like this, and the second bend is like this. That means that we cannot get away without distortions or without cuts. So let's go and deal with the problems one at a time. Go to your edge cut, and you can see they already have the selections ready, but let's go and do them. So with your move tool, let's go and do a double click here, shift double click here, undo, good, shift double click here. I'm going to go, I'm going to choose which sides I'm going to open. I'm going to keep the back as the let's say the main that's going to hold onto everything else. So I want to open everything else. So shift double click here. You can see this is where I'm cutting my cube with my X-Acto knife, where you would cut a box to, put it on the ground and unfold it. So watch this now. I've cut 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these lines, and I need to cut 2 more only. This one and this one. And the reason I'm doing that is because this part on top is going to unfold upwards, and this one is going to unfold downwards, and we're going to have this stretched out. So what's the next course of action in order to do that? Well, we need some sort of projection, right? And for this particular case, I'm going to keep it simple. I'm just going to go here and do a frontal projection of the whole thing. And then just as a test, I'm going to click UV Unwrap. So already we have a relatively good unwrapping of this, and any distortion that has been introduced is because of these little rounding thingy madoodles, right? It's because these cannot retain their edge size because they're bent in two dimensions, in two directions. So either we go with this because it's not very important, or we need to start cutting. So let's start cutting. Why not? So UB for the ring selection, ring cut, and I'm going to cut this. I'm going to shift cut this. Yeah, our hit points are a bit. They're a bit. So it's cut all these, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep these cut as they are. You can see that everything that's selected now is going to become a cut. Now this, we're going to have a cut here and a cut here, but there's no cut over here. So this is going to create some interior cut, like a buttonhole. So I'm going to add a couple here. So these are open and by themselves. I'm going to go and add these as well, because everywhere I put a cut, it's going to create that camera time. So wherever you put the cut, it's going to allow them to fan out. That's what we're trying to do. That's what's going to relieve the tension from the distortion, right? So I'm putting my cuts where my fingers touch. It's going to go, right? So that's what I'm trying to do. Like that. So let's go and do the same thing on the other side. Again, this is a cut like a buttonhole. So shift click to add these. Can someone, Maxon, fix the selections, please? Thank you very much. I love you all. So let's go on the other side here. UB. Click on this and click on this. And the hit spots, please. Thank you very much. So that's not for you viewers. It's for Maxon. Good. I'm going to leave these for now. We're going to do them afterwards. You can see the pattern here. Just try and imagine this as little fingers, so that wherever I put that selection, it's going to cut it and allow it to go loose and free and relax. Let's go all the way to the top. I'm going to leave these as they are. Oh, we do have a problem here. Oh no, we don't have a problem. It's fine. It's going to cut and all that. So let's go and unwrap this. Immediately you will see that it retains its shape. So before, undo, it had these lobe-shaped thingies, but now you can see immediately it's nicely stretched, because these now are sort of independent. They are, they can go and be their own little size without interfering with the rest of the object. So by knowing these strategic cuts, and we're going to add a few more, we don't really care what's going on in the corner. If you start caring about what's going on in the corner, then you have to deal with distortions, or I don't know. There are ways to go about it, but again, you can't satisfy everything. Again, if I want to get rid of every single distortion, I would go and select this and this and this and this, and do this on these little corners. So shift this, 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 and this. UV and wrap. Again, you can see now it's even straighter, and we're going to see the same correction happening here, 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 and here. UV and wrap, and go to the bottom and do that here as well. So if you really, really, really care about keeping your big surfaces straight and all that, this will be the method. You need to find all those polygons that require you to, relieve the tension. And these are going to be polygons which are in places where you have a deformation, a bend in two dimensions. Again, this is very important. A bend here by itself would be fine. So the bend here, there you go, that's a good example. These polygons here bending, when they unwrap, they create no distortion. That's your piece of paper that's unwrapping. When you start adding the second bend that is contained within all these, that's where you have the problem, right? So that's what you need to make sure. Now, otherwise they would have made footballs, what is called on this side of the Atlantic soccer balls, without them being stretchy out of leather and one continuous part. They can't. Every single football has a pattern which they sew together to create a sphere. So let's go and straighten this out. Go to your edge, select one edge, UV straighten, align UV islands. I always confuse those, and there it is. So nice and straight, our wedges, pretty much perfect. If you want to go and sort of bring some of these things together, you can sort of go and do it by welding edges. So let's go and select these polygons here. Go to the edges and say, okay, let's just select this edge, select this edge. Let's select these edges and these edges. What I'm doing here is, and again, this is just for demonstration purposes, right? I want to bring these all together. So what you can do with these edges selected, you can do a UV weld and relax. Now I need to turn off the auto realign, all right? And I need to turn on the restrict polygon selection. Yeah, duh, I didn't want that to happen. So I need to pin. Let me see. I haven't done this for a long while. I want to keep these in position, pin them, select these, UV weld and relax with pins and restrict to polygon selection. Thank you very much. Yeah, whatever. UV weld. Okay. It would work to a certain degree. Just forget about the last little segment here. Yeah, sort of. Right, you could bring them in, and I don't think we even need the pins for that. Not you. The relax part is what's causing the problem now, because they need to relax in a certain way and so forth. So let's just go and select our edges here and just UV weld. Yep. So this will bring things sort of in, give you a bit more continuity by adding a bit of distortion, but at least you have fewer cuts. So this is how I'd go about doing it now. Go here and do that and UV weld. So you can see it's trying to keep these in place and just bring them together. So sometimes you may need to add sort of a secondary action to this just to bring it to a certain degree. So maybe I do this and UV weld and do that and UV weld. There you go. So now I can go and connect these two and these two. Again, UV weld, these two and these two, UV weld, and there you go. And then these two and these two, UV weld. So again, without disturbing, I couldn't say disturbing, without disturbing the rest of the object, this way we can go and sort of just get rid of some of these cuts to create a more, an object that is has more continuity. There you go. So not a bad technique, to be honest. Bit of a manual labor here, but there you go. Take you 5 minutes to do. And yeah, you get that continuity back. But it's imperative to get the rest of the object in its right place to first use cuts and so forth. So let me see, what are we? 52 people, excellent. Now, let's move on to the other things and see if there's anything particular about the others, because we're entering now. Oh, okay, that's not bad. Let's go and grab this, press H, bring it here. So this is a watertight model as far as I can tell. You can use your mesh checker if you want to see if it's got any holes and so forth. So the part that's within the hammer, so if you see part of it is in the hammer, so it's a good idea to go and split those from each other, because most of it won't really be visible. So that's the first thing I would do, is I would go here and select this, one of these around here, and just UV unwrap. So now I've got two things on top of each other. The other thing would be to go down, I would guess down the middle, and unwrap this. Maybe the side is even better. It depends how your object is going to be viewed. You can even go and remove a third part. So now we've got three different elements here. As far as this is concerned here, let's go and select it. So move tool, polygon, and let's select one polygon. There you go. This. And now you can see that this has a very good unwrapping. As you can see, it's not bad. Any distortion is at the corner, so I don't really care. I'll consider this done. So I can go and say select, hide selected. Now this little part here, I need to open it. There's no other way to do this. So let's go with my move tool, my edge selection. I'm going to select this and go all the way here. I can see my seam, Command Shift and click, and there you go. And I can go and align. I can select one and align it, and there it is. So that's done as well. So hide selected. And I'm going to apply the same. Here we have these little folds. So I'm going to try and do this in a way where it's we can retain some of the continuity. Now, the bottom part, if it's still there, it's going to add problems. It's your choice where you're going to cut it. Unwrap. I think this is done. Maybe I go and align it and then take the whole thing and move it out of the way and hide it. You don't have to move it out of the way. I just like to do that. So hide selected. And there you go. We have this cylindrical thing here. And because it's sort of these bend at different rates, it is going to introduce some distortion, this thing. So let's go and see what kind of distortion it's going to introduce. Go here, Command-Shift click, and go all the way around. Command-Shift click, and just UV and wrap. You can see it's getting this sort of distortion. Now, one of a lot of when am I coming back to the UK? Not anytime soon, I'm afraid. So sometimes we need these two sides, because this is the best unwrapping if you want to keep the continuity as much as possible. But maybe you want these two sides to wrap around. And that's not a very easy thing to do. Now, there is a tool that was added a couple of versions ago when you have quads. And this has been modeled properly. So everything is a quad, and we have horizontal and vertical lines. If you select this island, you can do UV rectangularize. I can't say that word. Rectangularize. I actually, when I was doing my tutorials, I had to record it 3 or 4 times and just paste it in. Rectangularize. And this gives you this, which is basically, it has distortion. We don't care, but at least it has continuity, which means that it's easy to make something that wraps around, a texture that wraps around. And having said that, let's go and show all. And let's select all, and let's go and pack them and preserve orientation and all that nice jazz, and do that. And here it is. And maybe I want to align this, so just select this and align. And yeah, now someone would say, it's a bit distorted on this side and a bit distorted on that side. What if I want it to be nice and symmetrical? Well, let me show you how you would go about doing that. Let's go and find this. There you go. So let's go and double click and select it. Now this is the Z, so that's the front, I believe. So Alt H to zoom in. There it is, the front. What I would do in this particular case is do my frontal projection. Right, there you go. Frontal projection. I know it's straight. And now I want to relax everything else. I don't need to do it in this particular case, but if you want to relax things, is you select your significant polygons. These are the significant polygons. You convert them to points by pressing Command or Control points. You add these pins, and with all these selected, you relax this with pinpoints. Because what this is going to do, it's going to retain all the important part of your model, and then try to just relax everything else. And that's the best way to use pins with the frontal projection and all that. So this is exactly the same configuration as this and has no distortion whatsoever. What happens outside, it's a totally different story. And if you want to sort of relax these, you need to go and cut them and do all that nice stuff. So UB in edge mode, and you would go and do this and this and this. And UV in without realignment. There you go. And that's nice and open now. So many different methods. This has least amount of distortion. This has fewer cuts. Again. So a simple wedge is ridiculously tedious. I would have to perform the same method to something like a sci-fi ship with multiple bevels. No simpler solution? Well, but again, it depends on what you're trying to do. Do you want to paint on it? Do you want, if you have a specific strategy as to how you want each part to be UV unwrapped, you have to decide that, you have to do that. Otherwise, get your spaceship and use your automatic UV packed. This is funny because this is what this would give you, which is, it could be even better than what I did. If you have any, let's say, spaceship or something like that, send it to me. I'll keep it confidential. I won't tell it to, I won't show it. I won't give it to anyone. I'll show it if I have to. But I want to understand, all right, okay, Nikos Alamakis, very good friend from Greece, back from the good old days. We come from the 80s. Yeah. So, all right, this is an important RS Graphics is asking something very important. And I think that if you get your heads around that, generally your lives are going to become better. Number one, why are you trying to UV unwrap something? Is it because you want to put it in a game? Is it because you want to paint textures on it? Is it because you have some ready-made textures and the software you use or the renderer you use requires you to use UV maps to put it on there? Every different answer would require you to pretty much follow a different approach. I need a gum. So in cases like RS Graphics, I would love to see a model, right? So you send me a model if you wish, or part of a model. You don't have to send the same the whole thing. Find a part of the huge model you're talking about, and explain to me what you want. What is your objective? The other side. UVs are used predominantly for texturing. What is your idea? Because sometimes there could be a solution that doesn't require you to do the UV unwrapping. Or if you want to stick decals on something and the UVs are a mess, well, with Cinema 4D, you can use projections. You can do auto. So our baking has included the automatic packed UVs. So if you do a frontal projection or cylindrical projections on your model, 6 or 7 models, and then you bake them using automatic UVs. I did a tutorial, I think it's for Cineversity, where I took EJ's little cartoon car, and that's precisely what I do. So maybe that shows the technique you can use to do your spaceship. But unless I see the spaceship and what's your idea of how you want to use the model, including the UVs, to do what? Are you trying to circumvent limitations of your renderer or something like that? It makes a huge difference how you're going to approach it. Having said that, there are times when, for whatever reasons, you will need to go and manually do that. That's, it's unfortunate. It's not fast. It's very tedious. But you will go and have to do it. Try the automatic UV packed and see how that goes. And in the meantime, you know where I am on Twitter. DM me and we can talk about that. But excellent question. It is the essence of UV problems is that understanding. Do I need to do it? If I do, to what extent? And when you know what extent, how do I do each part? So let me read some more of these questions. Let's see. All right, all right, Mehmed, brother, you want Udemy support for Maxon. So I'm going to say a couple of words about Udemy. The 80s. Yeah. What version are you using? I'm using R21. Is this course for me? Well, this is S24. When were the new UV tools? I think they were introduced with S22. So you would have maybe the old interface. Yeah. Anyway, so let's talk about UDIMs. UDIMs, I'm going to simplify it, and I don't want to insult anyone, but UDIMs is just a naming convention. That's it. It's a naming paradigm. The question is, what does that naming paradigm do? And the answer is, look at my screen. So, let's do the following very Cinema 4D thing. Let's get the hammerhead. Hammerhead. Right. So let me go get rid of everything else. And let's go and go to standard interface. Go to my 3D view, because that's where the fun is going to happen. There we go. So we have this hammerhead. One of the things we can do with Cinema 4D is we can apply a material on the hammerhead and see it, right? And then we can apply another material on hammerhead, but on a polygon of the hammerhead. Let's go and say I want the material to be applied here. So it will do the selection for me. And it takes that selection, which has a name polygon selection 1, and it applies it through here to polygon selection 1. So this is what I have. I have an object which has this, and on top of it, in that selection, it has a different material. I think that Cinema 4D is one of the very few programs that can actually do that. What you will usually do in this in these circumstances are the following. So let me go and create a nice little unwrap for this, because it makes more sense to see it. And I'm going to do it using automatic UV packed, and there we go. So now we're going to see this little bugger. There you go. So let me see if, there you go. So look at this. That polygon selection is the one we've confined that other material. And Cinema 4D can handle it through the link. Now, do you see what just happened here? When I select this object, it applies things to everything. When I select this object, it applies it only to this, all right? Because the UV editor reflects the selection of the texture tag. Now, if I couldn't confine it here, what is another way of applying it? So let's assume I didn't have this. And now I have to find a way, which is going to be basically how UDIMS works. That's what I'm getting at, okay? I want to be able to apply this material to this selection, but I am not allowed to use the selections. Here's how you do it. You take this polygon selection and you move it to the other tile. So you put it from 0.3 to 1.31. There you go. So now this polygon selection exists here. And you would say, yeah, but it doesn't change. Whoa, wait a second. We're not done yet. Select both materials and make sure that you have no tiling, so that each material is strictly applied on the normalized tile, this one here, right? So what we have here is this material. I want it to be applied to whatever is here, and this material to whatever is here. Well, let me show you how to do that. You go to this material and you tell it to offset by 100%. So this material is applying to these polygons. This material is applying to these polygons. This is what UDIMs do. The only difference is that instead of doing it this way manually, for each texture you want to be applied to any number. Let's say I want these to move to a third tile. I'm going to get these and move them to 2.88. There they are. These are on the third tile. This is tile, I think, 0.0. This is 1.0. This is 2.0. If you read the documentation on UDIMs, it gives you the nomenclature of what is the naming you need to name each texture. So in Cinema 4D, if you prepare your file so that each and every of these islands you wish to be on a different tile, depending on your interpretation of the naming convention, because different studios use different naming convention. It's becoming standardized, but I'm not sure what everyone uses. You can actually save whatever the texture, this one grid, the image here, if your program is saving them out for a UDIM compatible software to read them, like Mari or something like that, you just need to put at the end of the file the naming convention that tells it if it's on tile 000. We're doing it using coordinates. We are sending it 100% is plus 1, right? If I want it to go to this tile, I'm going to put 200%. If I want it to go up, I'm going to put 200% here. No, that's length. Oops, offset. There you go. And that's how you move things around. And you select your polygons and you move them around, and then you sort of counter move the object. So what you just saw is the application of manual UDIMs in Cinema 4D. So yes, we can. We just don't have a workflow to do that. If you understand UDIMs, if you follow the UDIM paradigm, you can even create some sort of Python script that reads the UDIM file extensions, which is bracket 1 point whatever. Again, go read the article, and you can put that data over here. You can force that data over here. I don't know, maybe even Espresso can do that. If it's on tile, this is on tile 2, there you go, 2 times 100%, and it's on 0. This is 100, there you go. So this is how this is supposed to work. You can map your naming convention, the UDIM naming convention, to the offset, providing you turned off your tiling, and you have exactly the same thing. And just move your UVs to be in that appropriate tile. So next time someone has an object that was made in UDIMs, you can use this paradigm to make it align with whatever you're doing. So if anyone asks you, does Cinema 4D have UDIMs? You say, yeah. And I know how to do them. Not me, but you. You out there. So let's see if we have any more questions. How would you place decals on messy UVs mesh using a front projection? Right, let's do that, because we still have the tank to deal with. And you are heroes. Everyone is a hero here. So let's say I want to put let's mess up the UVs. How can I mess up the UVs? Let's select every edge and do a UV unwrap. And then let's take all that and pack it. Good. Do you like this? I want to break everything up. Come on. I don't want it to, I want it to auto realign. There you go. Even worse. Come on. I want to cut everything. Anyway, is that bad enough? Right. Let's take all these and make them small, right? Is that bad enough? So these are my UVs. They're terrible. And I want to put a decal. Well, the decal itself is going to create, let's get this and put it as a decal. So flat projection. Let's make it, let's select the object, select this, go to this tool here and scale it down. There you go. I'm scaling down my projector. I'm going to move it around. I want to make the Z point where I want it to be. So this is a logo I want to put here, so to speak. There you go. And I'm going to put it on top, right? I think this is a bit terrible. So 0, 0, 0, just rotate it. I want to put a logo on the top. 90, scale it down. Let's assume this is my logo. Again, I've turned tiling on. There you go. That's how you put a decal. If you want this to become, if you want to get the UVs for this, let's assume that you want this particular placement for the UVs. That's not a problem. You do UVW from, generate UVW from coordinates. There it is. So you can use the UVW from coordinates to convert any of these projections onto a UV layout, and you can use them both. I hope that answered your question. So thanks, but some 3D apps are separating textures in materials. For example, like 001 to your main problem. Yeah, you have to do that manually. So what you're trying to solve is the following. We can't use UDIMs, right? So I understand what the potential problem is. Let's say body paint, right? We're doing something with body paint. Well, body paint, although it saves files and the bump and the specular and all that when we're painting, it doesn't save them, and it's agnostic of UDIMs. So it'll be hard to do it. But in terms of either using files that have their textures in a UDIM configuration, yes, you can't read them automatically, so that each file with the appropriate extension, like albedo for color and, I don't know, AO, put it in the diffuse and all that, especially with the reflectance channel, if you have multiple, if you have, let's say, roughness or specularity or something like that, your PBR model, it doesn't do it automatically. What I'm saying is that if you do the manual work and you load all your images and place them where they need to be, you turn off your tiling and make sure that your material is applied to that particular tile, you can correctly read files that have been saved with UDIMs. Or you can prepare save project with asset. It's going to save out all the materials and all that, and you have to do the naming. So yes, There is a limitation that the naming is not automatically done, and these conversions need to be done manually. We don't have a workflow. But in terms of the technology, UDIMS is not a huge innovation in the sense it doesn't change anything about UVs. It just creates a naming convention that allows you to tell objects to only be assigned to particular UV sets. And that's because the majority of programs do not support use a material on a particular polygon selection that like Cinema 4D does. So yes, I understand what the problem is. We don't have a solution for that. But if you want to read UDIM files which have been made using a UDIM workflow, you can. And if you want to save them, you have to do some manual work, but you can prepare files for a UDIM workflow if you do the naming and all that. So, Logan, I'm going to remove, I'm not going to allow you to watch it. Right, that's it. I'm putting you on a blacklist. So, let's see. So the big picture advice you have giving is to just concern yourself with the UVs as much as necessary, and that looks right for a given project instead of spending a lot of time on the UVs and those necessary. Well, that should be the guide for everything about 3D, right? The example I give is all the amazing Western movies we watched that were made in the 40s and 50s. The beautiful towns in the middle of the desert were just facades. Right? They didn't build real towns unless there was a town there, but it's facades. The same thing applies. Everything is fake. Now, in terms of UVs, UVs are useful in many other areas other than texturing. You can use, we have a surface deformer. You can use them to do all sorts of other effects because it is a surface parameter, right? It does give you some information about the surface and information which you have put on the surface. And like for particle emission, for example, you can make your UVs so that if you emit closer to the 0 U, and then gradiate up to the 1 for whatever reason, I don't know. I don't even know how to do that right now, but maybe you can do that. It's an extra piece of data, like vertex maps, like every information that may become useful as you move forward with your project. It's good to do it. If you don't have to do it, if you know for a fact that you're not going to use that information, no, you don't have to do it. In Cinema 4D, if you're making a product shot and you're going to use a bottle or something like that, I don't even think you will ever need UVs. In my career, when I was doing a lot of product shots in the UK, especially for cigarette packs, yes, for the packs themselves, because I was getting an Illustrator file that was the unwrapped version, I actually used that as a guide to do my UVs, because by just making them the same exact as the pack was the best way to go about it. And that was, unfolding a cube as a cross. That was as much as I ever needed to go. I guess that when the most important part is now with all these new renderers that require nice and clean UVs in many situations, that could become more of a necessity. But don't, unless you're learning, right, doing things because it sort of moves you forward and gives you more information, and you practice and you do so many things, it's not bad doing it. Just don't overburden yourselves, especially if you're busy. It's a hard trade, right? It takes a long time to do this, and your brain needs to be split between creativity and technical stuff and all that. It's a huge fight that happens. Try and take shortcuts that won't compromise your work, but will allow you to do the things you want to do. If it's learning, go do UV and wrapping. But if you don't have to do it, just don't do it. That's it. That's as simple. That's my general advice. So, yeah, don't do UVs if they're not necessary. That was Scott. So it seems obvious on the surface, but a point can be made is that when animating, you run into unforeseen direction of a project while you're in UV creation mode. Yeah, there's not much you can do about that, though, is there? It is. You use your experience to make it as best as possible under the known facts, right? I wish we had foresight and we knew what was going to happen in projects. Yeah, if a gift everyone should have is the ability to tell the future on what the client will want. That's a superpower. Anyhow, if your mesh is in subdivision surface and UV mapped, will there be distortion? Right. Very, very good question. There is a setting in the subdivision surface, the subdivide UVs, and depending on what you want to do, you may need to use one or the other. So go do your tests. I tell people to do their tests and then I do it. So let's get rid of the hammer. Let's drag this on. Let's put it here on the plane. I'll put it on the plane and do that and see if there's any significant difference here. So again, let's turn on my viewport. I'm not showing my screen. Okay. Let's do that again. Forgive me. So this is my Mac. So what I'm going to do, I just made a plane. I did nothing. I just made a plane and the subdivision surface object. I'm going to do it again. I'm using the subdivide UVs. This is what sort of affects the subdivision surface object. And I went to my UV grid, and in the viewport, I'm setting this to no scaling because I just want to see these nice and fancy. All right. It's viewing the reverse because it's plus Y. Put it minus Y. It's going to be sort of better, I guess. Oh no, I was upside down. Minus plus Y. Good. Hooray! I can see it now. Now let's put this under a subdivision surface object and see if we get any differences. Now watch this. You can see that the subdivision surface subdivides the object, doesn't subdivide the UVs. I think that if that's the edge. If I put it to standard, it will. So already you see that there's a difference between how the standard, the boundary doesn't make a difference, but the edge does. So depending on exactly what you're trying to do and which parts of your model are sort of subdividing and all that, just keep an eye on subdivide UVs because that's going to affect it. So let's see. It runs model for the UDIM just fine. Yeah, with a great purpose. Good. You're still there. 49. I had a sudden drop off. People are sick of me dropping off. So what else? Now we're going to enter the sort of the final stretch after about 2 hours of talking about UVs, and hopefully you're going to have questions which I want you to ask mainly on Twitter. It's easier for me to reply on Twitter if you have questions. Now let's do the final thing, and I'm going to just demonstrate. I think I've got my tank open here. So tank turret, no UVs. This is made by someone, right? It was a part of another bigger model. Now it's fully triangulated. It's got broken geometry. It's got holes, inconsistencies. It's got a bunch of stuff here. You know, it's got points missing and all that. This would be a especially painful thing to do. So if this is ideal for doing something like material, say UV double from projection, automatic UV packed, and you get this, all right? So number one, when you have a model like this, go with automatic UV packed, and you will get something which for 3D painting and whatnot is very useful. Now, some of you may have some specific, affection with pain and suffering, like I do many times. And maybe you want to go and do this manually, okay? And the next 10 minutes is going to be for you and for myself. So select everything and let's go and do a frontal projection. Just to get everything, to remove all seams that don't exist. Now, you will see that we have some things that look like seams. If I go around, we'll find some things. Most of it is because the geometry is disconnected, right? And because it's not welded at all. I think we can show UV seams. There you go. So what you see as seams here are not literal seams we created. It's because the geometry, the 3D geometry, is literally cut. Right, there you go. Look at these big gaps. You can fly a tank through here. Now, unless we start fixing this geometry, there is absolutely nothing better we can do with the UVs. And here is the best shot you have. select everything, move it out of the way. I just want this to be nice and clean. Rule number one when you're dealing with these kind of things, use your fong break selection tool. Because based on the fong angle, now look at that, it's highlighting these. It's going to actually select all the polygons that are within 20 degrees from each other. If you want to fine tune it, you do this and it's going to select fewer and fewer of them. Look at that, fewer now. So maybe 2.5 degrees here will give us, let's go a bit more. Usually I've got an old Mac and I don't see that blue preview line. If you have a more modern machine, you'll see a preview when you're changing this. It's a blue outline. So let me take this 10.9 and just go and say UV unwrap. There you go. So one by one, we're going to rip this apart. I'm not going to do the whole thing because it has a lot of details. I'm going to show you some of the main bodies, what you can do with them. Now, this is a very good example of something that, although it comes as a seamless mesh, there are parts of this which I don't want to have connected. So if you go here on the back, there's this big part. It's this little bugger here. I want to go to my selection tool. There you go. This bugger here, over here. You can see it's already disconnected in two parts. So what I like to do with these kind of things is just go and get rid of it. Just split it in a separate entity. Now, what you will see is that it seems to be cut out, but there's still some very, 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 very small polygons that are connecting up. There you go. It's that little thing over there. I can't zoom in more. So what I'm going to do is select this edge because I want to see it. Press S, and there it is. Look at that. Our seam is going here, and our seam is going here, but it's not connecting. I'm actually going to select this and UV unwrap. Not the whole thing. I want to select this. Nothing was selected, so I'm going to do that again. Select this and do a UV unwrap. Good. And now, as you can see, it's disconnected from one side. Don't worry about the sizes. It's because it's trying to sort of relax them. So I'm going to go on the other side now. So I'm going to select this little edge, press S here, just so I can go to the other side and select the other. There you go. This, UV unwrap. Now look at this thing. Just 3 cuts. And now we have something that's starting to look a bit better. Now, again, we're getting these wraps here because this, it folds in itself. It's like an inverted vase. And there's no easy way to do that. So let's go and cut these out. So now I'm going to deal with this. So double click on this, and double clicking with your select tool selects the island, which is ideal because it's not going to touch anything else. Go to the move tool and select this and this and this. And I'm going to leave that for now. UV unwrap. So one side has been disconnected. I'm going to do the same to the other side. This and this and this. And UV unwrap. So now we have 3 pieces, right? This, this, and this. But the great thing about this, I can always go and remove these 2 pieces if I think they don't belong here. So UV unwrap here. Let's go to the other side. Let's go select this and UV unwrap here. Good. Now we have the colors I've put on the multicolored island so I can see what... Oh, sometimes, for some reason, they may re-weld themselves. In that case, there's a very, very, very simple solution. Just select it and move it out. That's it. That's all you need to do. If that happens. Because I think there's some mathematical errors that occur. So these little 4 pieces now, they are good enough to leave as they are. So let's just select all these. Make sure that select connected is selected. Move these out of the way and go and remove them. So hide selected. And this will simplify your 3D model as well. So what do we have here? Okay. Let's go to this top thing. Again, one thing, I amend this middle menu sometimes, or I rip out my selections and I put them here or somewhere like that. But it's good to have your selections available. So fong break, look at this, 1, 2. UV unwrap. I think we're done with this. Hide selection, here they are, hide selected. You find all the surfaces which make sense. Let's select this. UV unwrap. Look at this now, because this has very long polygons, and this is an excellent case to see what other algorithms you can use. It wraps on itself. This is not a good unwrap, right? The solution is extremely simple. Select it and just change your UV relax to LSCM and apply. LSCM is more geared, more capable of handling situations like this. But anyhow, another way you could have done this without LSEM would be, because you know that your object is orthogonal, go to the top view or any view that is perpendicular to what you're viewing and do a frontal projection. So both ways work, and you will choose the one that's easier for you. So move it out of the way and go and hide selected. So that is basically the process. Let's find a couple of difficult ones and then we can drop it. There's a part of this, because I've unwrapped this for beta testing and all that a million trillion times, again and again and again. I'm starting to know exactly what its problems are. Now, one of its problems lies in these little areas where, even with the phone break, trying to select, it selects some of these parts, not all. And this one here, this is quite an interesting little thingamadoodle. Selecting this little island here. Let's see if I can select it without selecting everything else, right? If you want to test it, you just move it around. Now, let's go and UV unwrap this. You can see that the unwrap here, because it doesn't have any cuts to unfold, this is a single model. Models like these, the only way to go and unwrap them without issues is to do the selections only in 3D, right? So let's go to Edge. We can see the existing seams. You have to go in here and select this and this very slowly. You have to take your time with this. Click, Command-Shift-Click. Go around. We have these, which it's quite odd, but that Shift and Command-Shift-Click to make sure I got everything else. And then click on this. Go all the way down here. You can see here we have a split. You choose which one goes with which. Scientifically, you have to find a scientific way. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Catch your edge. I can't do this. And I think this is good to start. Unwrap. So now you've got your 4 sides, but the inside is terrible. But this, you can't expect this to be part of the model because it's concave. So select these 4 edges and cut it out. You've unwrapped. There you go. So now we're starting to get a better sense of our object and how it's going to be unwrapped and so forth. This is another, it's another cube. So cut, 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 and cut. This should open up like a cross. There you go. If it has any small details, maybe a LSCM will give it a, no, it doesn't. But anyhow, this is how this unwraps, because it's crooked, it's been made, it's not even flat, it's got some weird polygons. This is the best unwrap you're going to get for this. So for complex objects like these, you have to break them up apart. You have to, take the shortest path, and this is inside. Unless you got a shot, like, a movie shot where the bullet goes in there, and or the anti tank missile, then you don't need to deal with that really. So hide selected. And the other hard part, again, it has to do with selections. It's all these little bits and pieces you have up here. Let me change this to not multicolored, right? This is just bad topology, right? You won't get far trying to do sensible things here. So you have to go with just splitting things up. I'm just moving it in my view. I'm not even going to unwrap this. I've just cut it out. Maybe I'm going to relax it later on. So then just go and hide that. Hide selected. Getting rid of anything that's redundant. Right, get this. Let's UV unwrap this. It's terrible. Let's get a edge. Let's go here. Add the edge. UV unwrap. It's becoming more manageable. Maybe this edge as well. UV unwrap. And there you go. So we have something a bit better than before. Maybe I need to split these. There you go. And now let's see. Select this. Move it out of the way. Select this. Maybe LCM. No. But that's the shape of this object, right? Look at that. It's smaller here and it's bigger here. So this unwrap is pretty accurate. And that's how you unwrap a tank. The main tool is patience. And make sure that when you are, let's show all, let's select all, let's go to packing, let's do a geometric packing. It's going to be a bit of a disaster, but it's fine. There you go. the parts we did and the parts that were frontally projected. So let's see. Camera. That's me. So unless there's a question, let's see. It runs models. It's fine. Good. Right, makes sense. Screen. Yeah, I caught that. Great, thank you. LOL. Yeah. So, there are about a million other things we could say about certain nuances. What I would suggest at this point is, number one, if you have LinkedIn Learning, X Linda, whatever, I have done, it's using the old tools. I may have a full course on UVs. I guess it's pretty redundant now, but it does talk about certain concepts about UVing and all that. I tried to cover as much as I could, and since then, that was years ago, I think I've refined the way I see UVs, and hopefully I was able to sort of convey some of that information. If anything is unclear, if you have a hard case of something that you would potentially like to UV and wrap, let me know. Send me a Dropbox link or something like that. DM me through Twitter, or ask your questions publicly in Twitter so other people can engage as well. Because I do believe that UVs is the naughty child that always gets in trouble, whether it's their fault or not. And I used to be that child, so I understand how sometimes clarifying things is it helps clear the air. So the more questions you ask, the more cases you present, the more stuff you will learn through the process. I do find UV unwrapping combined with objects like the turret relatively problematic, because on its own, it's not only the UV technology that has to deal with this. If the topology is bad, if your meshes are unconnected in certain parts and so forth, it tries to do what it tries to do, and that's pretty much it. But anyhow, please let me know. Thank you very much, every single one of you. This show, is made by you. Although I have to say that I do sit by myself and do presentations with everything off. I enjoy doing that. Nonetheless, the value of these live shows comes when people are present. So share them, spread the word, follow me on Twitter, subscribe and all that. Get your families subscribe, pets, budgies, everything. And I'm going to start having guests. It's something I said the other day. I've lined up. I'm not going to mention any names quite yet, but we're going to have some quasi-famous people on the show. But it's not going to be only chit-chat. We're going to have our little... Some of them are going to be X-rated in the sense that we're not going to spare our F words and all that, because the content is going to be relevant as well. And everyone's going to share a screen. So when we announce our guests, it will be nice if you prepare questions, hard if you may, and we'll take it from there. Let me know your thoughts. Thank you very much. Unless there's someone wants to add a note, I'm gonna shut this down in, let's say, 30 seconds. So it's precisely 2:27 over here. Not Michael. I'm not going to have Michael, but I may have some other person whose images are not aimed at kids. Earth projection type. I'm used to... I mean, Canada looks bigger in the current Mercado projection, so I'm quite okay with that. Yeah, the second one, Justin. Maybe we're negotiating, but it's going to be fun. Nick is a very good friend, and 15 seconds to go, I think, or I missed half a minute. So thank you very much for coming, and the stream is going down in 5, 4, 3, 2. I know you can still hear me. Bye-bye, everyone.